Biblical scholars have argued for years about the location of these holy sites. Now, one man says he might have found them.
For centuries, one name has kept the world puzzled: Mount Sinai. The same mountain that is said to be the place where Moses received the Ten Commandments, and from where the story of the Exodus began, a story that changed the course of history itself. But the most surprising thing is that even after so many years, no one has been able to say with certainty where the real Mount Sinai actually is: Egypt or somewhere else, in a completely different location. Now just imagine, what if suddenly a discovery comes out that turns this entire debate upside down? In 2025, something like this actually happened. A team reached a remote and almost restricted area in Saudi Arabia, a place where not only is it difficult for ordinary people to go, but even getting clear images is rare. They launched a special drone, not an ordinary one, but one equipped with a highly powerful ground-penetrating radar, capable of looking deep inside the mountain, not just at the surface. And what they found shocked everyone. Straight lines beneath the rocks, buried chambers, and strange geometric patterns, things that nature doesn't usually create on its own. All of this pointed toward something that had been built in an organized way. But by whom? And why? After the scan, all the clues started pointing toward the northwestern region of Saudi Arabia, especially around mountains like Jabal Makla and Jabal al-Lawz, the same areas that had been under suspicion for years, but without any solid proof. If this turns out to be true, this discovery could not only change the location of Mount Sinai, but also force us to understand the entire story of the Exodus in a completely new way. So what exactly is hidden inside that forbidden mountain that has left even top experts stunned? Make sure to watch till the end of the video, because the real mystery is still yet to be revealed. And if you enjoy such interesting research-based content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because you don't come across things like this every day. The biggest highlight of this mission was that, this time, the drone wasn't just capturing photos from above. People had seen this area before. Pictures were taken, guesses were made from a distance, but everything was limited to the surface. This time it was different. For the first time, data was being collected that could reveal what lies beneath the ground. The ground-penetrating radar mounted on the drone could scan deep inside the rocks. That means even things completely invisible from above could now be detected. At first, it seemed like only normal features would appear, like layers of rock or old geological changes. But as the scan moved forward, the picture started to change. Not just the surface, but even below it, something unusual began to appear. In some places, there were straight lines. In others, empty spaces, like small buried rooms. And the most shocking part was that in certain areas, geometric patterns showed up that nature doesn't typically form on its own. Looking at all this, it felt as if something had once been built there, and over time it had been buried beneath sand and stone. When this data was examined more closely, one particular area kept coming up again and again. All the signals were pointing toward northwestern Saudi Arabia. Especially two mountains kept appearing repeatedly: Jabal Makla and Jabal al-Lawz. Interestingly, some people had suspected these places even before, but no solid evidence was ever found. Because of that, the discussion never really moved forward. Now, for the first time, it feels like real information is starting to replace guesswork. This raises an important question. Are these places really that special? What is it about these mountains that makes them so significant? One big reason this whole story becomes even more interesting is an old biblical reference found in the book of Galatians. The Apostle Paul mentioned there that Mount Sinai is in Arabia. Earlier, people took this as a symbolic statement, but now some scholars believe he might have been pointing to an actual location, meaning Sinai might not be in Egypt, but somewhere in Arabia. Now connect this to the story of Moses. When he fled from Egypt, he went to live in a place called Midian. This region lies east of the Gulf of Aqaba, which today falls in northwestern Saudi Arabia. It was here that he witnessed the miracle of the burning bush. So if Moses had already lived in this region, it makes sense that when the Israelites left Egypt, their path could have gone in the same direction, toward Arabia. From this perspective, the entire route starts to look quite simple and logical. Leave Egypt, cross the sea, and then move toward Arabia. And it's not just religious texts, there are also physical clues on the ground pointing in the same direction. On peaks of mountains like Jabal al-Lawz, some rocks appear blackened on the top, as if they were once scorched by intense heat, while nearby mountains look completely normal. Some people connect this to the scene described in Exodus, where it is said that when God descended, the mountain was covered in smoke and began to tremble. In the same region, another unusual feature is often mentioned, a large rock that is clearly split into two parts. In between, there appears to be a smooth line or channel, as if water once flowed through it. What's surprising is that today this entire area is dry, yet there are signs nearby suggesting that water once flowed there with force. Some people link this to the story in Exodus 17, where Moses struck a rock and water came out of it to quench the people's thirst. In other words, there are things visible here that shouldn't normally exist in such conditions, and that's exactly what makes this mystery even deeper. When we look not just at the mountain but at the entire surrounding area, the story becomes even more fascinating. If this really is the place where the Israelites once camped, then there should be some signs nearby indicating the presence of a large temporary settlement, and that's what makes this location so intriguing. Right in front of the mountain there is a massive open plain, large enough to easily accommodate thousands of people. The story of Exodus also describes people camping in front of the mountain, and the layout here seems to match that description quite closely. Apart from this, in some places, long lines of stones can also be seen. It looks as if these were placed to mark some kind of boundary. Some believe these could be the same boundaries mentioned in the Bible, where people were warned not to go too close to the mountain. If that's the case, then these stones may not be just ordinary stones. They could be part of some ancient rule or ritual. In the same area, there is also mention of a stone platform. It doesn't look completely natural. Instead, it seems like it was built by human hands. Some people connect it to the altar that Moses is said to have built during the time of the covenant. Nearby, there's also a simple-looking spot that some link to the golden calf incident. And it doesn't stop there. On the surrounding rocks, carvings of cows and bulls have reportedly been found. These engravings remind some people of the time when the Israelites were worshiping the golden calf. Now, if these carvings really turn out to be from that same period, then they won't just be art. They could become evidence of a major historical event. Then there's another unusual feature, a single standing stone pillar. Some believe it could be one of the 12 pillars that were set up as symbols of the 12 tribes of Israel. It sounds quite fascinating, but every story has another side, and the same is true here. While some people are connecting all these signs to the real location of Mount Sinai, professional archaeologists and historians don't agree. According to them, it's not right to identify such an important historical site based only on a few similar-looking clues. First of all, they interpret Paul's statement, where he said Sinai is in Arabia, in a different way. According to them, during the Roman period, there was a region called Arabia Petraea, which also included the Sinai Peninsula. So it's possible that Paul was not referring to today's Arab countries, but to the political boundaries of his time. Apart from that, some ancient Egyptian texts also mention southern Sinai. Names like Thihat or Sefet appear in those records, which some experts believe could be early forms of the name Sinai. Interestingly, these references are even older than the time of Moses, suggesting that Sinai's connection with Egypt might go back much further. Another strong argument is that if an event like the Exodus really happened here, then there should be solid evidence from the Bronze Age, such as pottery, tools, inscriptions, or signs of settlements. But so far, nothing like that has been clearly found. Because of this, many scientists believe that whatever is being seen here might belong to different cultures from different time periods. As for the blackened rocks, scientists don't see them as anything miraculous. They say that in desert environments, extreme heat, wind, and chemical reactions can naturally darken the surface of rocks over time. So the situation is clear. On one side, this place raises many questions, and on the other side, there are equally strong arguments challenging it. That's why this mystery is still far from being solved. Similarly, the split rocks don't necessarily have to be the result of a specific event. Natural pressure within the allard and cracks forming over time can also cause such formations. Even the long lines of stones are debated. Some experts say they might not be sacred boundaries at all, but simple fences used to guide or control animals. After all, such stone enclosures were quite common in ancient nomadic societies. For a long time, this is how things continued. Some claimed this was the real place, while others completely rejected it. In other words, the debate remained limited to theories and assumptions. Then, slowly, technology began to change the game. A great example of this was seen in 2012 in the Angkor region of Cambodia. There, a technology called LIDAR was used, a system that can scan over dense forests and create a complete map of what's hidden underneath. Earlier, people believed there were only a few ancient temples in that area. But when the scan was done, an entire hidden city was revealed. Networks of roads, structures of buildings, and much more that had been buried under trees for centuries. This made one thing very clear. Just because we can't see something doesn't mean it isn't there. Many times, history remains hidden beneath the ground, waiting for the right technology to uncover it. With this same idea, a new step was taken in 2025. This time, a special drone was sent to study the mountains, equipped with a far more powerful ground-penetrating radar than ever before. This technology could not only scan the surface, but also look deep inside the rocks. Where earlier there were only guesses, now solid data was starting to come in. And when this data was closely analyzed, one particular mountain kept drawing attention again and again. When different locations were compared, it was found that the patterns discovered at this place matched with others, almost like pieces of a puzzle coming together. These patterns didn't look like ordinary natural formations. Instead, it seemed as if something had been deliberately constructed there. But along with this, a new question also emerged. If modern technology is pointing toward this place today, did people already know about it in the past? Or is this location only coming into light now? Could it be that it existed in stories for centuries, but never had solid proof? Now here's another interesting thought. Did this place become sacred after Moses arrived, or was it already considered special before that? Think about the burning bush moment. When Moses approached that strange fire, the voice he heard didn't say, "This place will become sacred." Instead, it clearly said, "Take off your sandals, because the ground you are standing on is already holy." That means the place was considered special even before that moment. This could suggest that Horeb, also known as the Mountain of God, might have been worshipped in some form even before Moses. It's possible that Moses didn't make a new place sacred, but instead arrived at a location that was already important to people. This idea also connects with a part of Moses' life when he was living in Midian. After leaving Egypt, he took shelter there and married into the family of Jethro, who is believed to have been a priest of Midian. This clearly suggests that Moses was living in an environment where religious traditions already existed. He used to move around that region as a shepherd, but it's hard to believe that he had no knowledge of the surrounding places. He was among people who understood their land and its beliefs very well. So it's quite possible that a place like Horeb was already significant to the local people. and Moses simply encountered it within that existing tradition. Over time, the identity of that mountain also kept changing. In the beginning, early Christian tradition did not strongly focus on visiting specific physical locations. People were more concerned with spiritual ideas. But in the 4th century, a major shift happened when the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great adopted Christianity. After this, efforts began to locate and preserve places connected to the Bible, and from here, the story started to take a new turn. A major turning point came in the 4th century when Constantine's mother, Helena, began her search for holy sites around 326 CE. Her goal was clear: to find the real locations connected to the Bible. During this time, monks and hermits started gathering near a mountain in Egypt known as Mount Sinai. They believed this was the place where Moses had witnessed the miracle of the burning bush. Gradually, a tradition formed around this place. People began to believe that this was the valley where God spoke to Moses. Over time, this belief became stronger. By the 4th century, a small community of monks had already settled there. They would share the story of this place with visitors and keep alive the memory of the bush they considered sacred. Then in the 6th century, another major step was taken. Emperor Justinian I ordered the construction of a fortified monastery here. Today, it is known as St. Catherine's Monastery. This place became not just a religious center, but also a major hub of knowledge. Its library preserved very ancient biblical manuscripts and early Christian writings, and it is considered one of the oldest libraries in the world. This is also where the Well of Moses is said to be, a place where it's believed Moses first helped the local people. But from here, a big question arises. If the Israelites really stayed near a mountain, camped there, and lived there for almost a year, then why don't we find clear evidence of it? Why don't we see any city walls or solid structures? The answer lies in their way of life. At that time, the Israelites were not a settled civilization. They were not city builders. They didn't have permanent houses, temples, or fortifications. They were a nomadic society, shepherds who lived in tents with their families and tribes, moving wherever they found water and grazing land. According to the Bible, they stayed in one place for about a year. But from a historical perspective, 1 year is a very short time, especially when nothing permanent was built. Because of this, the traces they left behind would have been very light. Experts say that such nomadic groups usually leave behind 4 types of traces, and over time these traces disappear quite easily. If such people stayed somewhere, they would leave signs. But the problem is, these signs don't last long. The first type, fireplaces. For cooking, they would arrange small stones in a circle. But after some time, the wind blows away the ash, rain and time scatter the stones, and animals trample over them. After a few seasons, everything is gone. The second, post holes from tent poles. These are so small and faint that they are hard to identify. Over the years, soil, wind, and sand fill them up, and slowly they disappear completely. The third, broken pottery pieces. Nomadic people carried very few belongings, so even their pottery was limited. When it broke, the fragments scattered around. Over time, they mixed with pieces left by other groups, making it almost impossible to tell which belonged to whom. The fourth, waste or latrine pits. In open areas, organic material decomposes quickly. In deserts, this process is even faster. Bacteria, insects, and time work together to erase everything. After a few thousand years, nothing remains visible. And the biggest factor is the desert itself. Here, sand is constantly shifting. Strong winds cover everything, and over time, all traces disappear. The desert simply doesn't allow things to last for long. So even if a nomadic community stayed there for some time, it's completely possible that their traces gradually vanished. The simple point is, just because evidence isn't visible doesn't mean nothing ever happened. Sometimes history remains hidden beneath the ground. Now another big question comes up. If an event as massive as the Exodus really happened, wouldn't Egypt have recorded it? It sounds reasonable, but there's something important to understand here. Most ancient Egyptian records were not created to tell complete history, but to display power and glory. In other words, they didn't present the full truth. They were more like tools of image building. Their inscriptions and monuments usually highlighted the victories, strength, and greatness of the pharaohs. Defeats, weaknesses, or embarrassing events were often deliberately left out. So, it's possible that if an event did happen, something that didn't reflect well on Egypt, it may simply not have been recorded. That's why even today, there are more questions than answers in this whole matter. If you look at history, there are many instances where Egypt didn't record things that weren't favorable to them. Take the example of the Hyksos, a foreign ruling group that once controlled a large part of Egypt. Later they were driven out, but there are very few direct records from that period. Most of what we know comes from later accounts or other sources. Another clear example is Akhenaten. He was the pharaoh who abandoned the traditional gods and introduced a new religious system. But after his death, later rulers almost erased him from history. His statues were destroyed, his name was removed, and it was as if he had never existed. These examples show one thing clearly. Egypt did not record everything, especially events that could damage its image. Now think about it. If something like the Exodus really happened, where a large number of slaves escaped, disasters struck, and the army suffered losses, it would have been a huge embarrassment for Egypt. In such a case, the absence of records is not surprising at all. There are also many cases in history where an entire society seems to disappear suddenly, but in reality, they don't vanish completely. They just lose their identity. A good example of this comes from 722 BCE, when the Assyrian Empire conquered the northern kingdom of Israel. This is where the story of the 10 lost tribes comes from. The Assyrians had a specific strategy. They would remove conquered people from their homeland and settle them in distant regions. The goal was simple: scatter them so much that they gradually forget their language, customs, and identity. When a community is separated from its roots and mixed into different places, over time its distinct identity begins to fade. Something similar happened with those 10 tribes. They were relocated to different regions, where they blended in with local populations. Some adopted new languages, others new customs, and slowly, their original identity became blurred. So these people didn't completely disappear, they just became part of other cultures under different names. Now, if we connect this idea to the story of the Exodus, an interesting similarity appears. During that time, the Israelites left Egypt and moved into the desert. They didn't leave behind big cities, strong structures, or permanent traces, almost as if they disappeared from the map. On the other hand, during the Assyrian period, people were physically relocated and scattered. This time, the people remained, but their identity slowly faded away. In simple terms, one disappearance was of place, and the other was of identity. In one case, people moved to a place where their traces vanished, and in the other, the people stayed, but they themselves changed. Now, to better understand this entire story, there's another important link: the Midianites. This was the community among whom Moses spent a significant amount of time after fleeing Egypt. If we want to understand the Exodus in a real ground-level way, it's important to know who lived in that region at the time and what their lifestyle was like. Discoveries in northwestern Arabia suggest that the Midianites lived there. But their identity wasn't defined by big cities or grand palaces. They lived in small temporary camps and didn't stay in one place. They kept moving based on seasons and needs. Their camps were often set up near water sources or trade routes. One clear sign of their presence is their pottery. These weren't ordinary vessels. They had red or brown designs with light-colored geometric patterns painted on them. These pottery pieces have been found in different locations, suggesting that the Midianites moved across a wide area while still maintaining a distinct identity. Along with this, excavations have also revealed copper-related remains, like slag left after smelting and broken parts of furnaces. This shows that they weren't just herders, but were also involved in copper work. So the Midianites were not just wanderers. They were, in a way, an organized society that knew how to use their resources effectively. Animal bones also support this picture. Remains of sheep, goats, and cattle indicate that the people living there depended largely on livestock. At the same time, small water collection systems have been found, like stone pits or channels used to gather rainwater or seasonal runoff. It's clear that they had learned how to survive in a dry environment. Interestingly, most of these findings are dated to around the 15th to 13th centuries BCE, and this is the same period that is often associated with the Exodus. This raises another question. Did this mountain become important after the Israelites arrived, or was it already significant before that? Some people believe the answer might be hidden in its name. One theory suggests that the name Sinai could be linked to the ancient Mesopotamian moon god Sin. In those times, high mountains were often associated with the sky or with deities. Another view is that the name might come from a Hebrew word meaning thorny bush, the same kind of bush that appears in the story of the burning bush. Some also connect it to an old name for the desert itself, reflecting the identity of that region. So regardless of how the name came about, one idea keeps coming up again and again. This place may have already been considered special in some way. Some physical evidence also seems to support this idea. Stone platforms and structures have been found here that don't look natural. Some believe these could have been ancient altars or places of worship. Nearby, animal bones have also been discovered, suggesting that some kind of communal or ritual activity may have taken place there. As for the burning bush, it can also be explained in a natural way. Thorny desert plants, like acacia, contain oils that can catch fire under extreme heat, or sometimes due to lightning. So some things may appear miraculous, but they can also have natural explanations, and that's what makes this entire mystery even more fascinating. For someone witnessing it, such a fire could feel very unusual, especially if the bush doesn't completely burn away but just appears to be on fire. But in desert regions, lightning strikes or sudden fires in dry conditions are not uncommon. Now, when we connect the whole story together, the picture slowly starts becoming clearer. On one side, we have modern technology, drones and ground-penetrating radar, bringing hidden things from beneath the ground into view. On the other side, we also understand how people lived back then, nomadic, without permanent homes, without walls. In such a situation, it's completely natural for their traces to disappear over time. Even Egypt's silence becomes a clue in itself. If something happened that went against their image, it wasn't considered necessary to record it. History has many examples where entire communities seem to suddenly disappear. But in reality, they move somewhere else or blend into other cultures. Take the 10 lost tribes, for example. They didn't just vanish into thin air. Over time, they spread into different regions, mixed with other people, and their identity slowly changed. So when we look at all these points together, one thing becomes clear. Just because we don't find evidence doesn't always mean nothing happened. Sometimes people scatter, change, or live in conditions where time erases every trace they leave behind. And now, with new technology, we might finally be able to see those faint traces that we couldn't even understand before. Remember, disappearance doesn't always mean the end. The desert isn't empty. It has simply been keeping its stories hidden until now. And if you enjoy mysterious, history-based stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more discoveries coming your way.